There are currently 22 exotic weapons from Destiny 1 that haven't been remastered into Destiny 2, so today I thought I would go through all of these missing weapons and suggest how I would personally rework them to fit into the Destiny 2 sandbox. I've tried to strike a balance between keeping the original aspect of each weapon while also adequately adapting them to the Destiny 2 frameworks like elemental verbs and so on. This video is going to be very similar in style to an older video where I designed the catalyst for every weapon that was missing one in Destiny 2, so if you like that video then you'll definitely enjoy this one. Speaking of, I will also be suggesting my ideas for the catalyst for each of these weapons too. But before we get into it, this video is brought to you by Manscaped. And with the holiday season upon us, there's no better time to treat yourself to the ultimate self-care experience with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. This bundle comes with the hallmark Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra that features two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, the skin-safe trimmer blade for precision and the skin-safe foil blade for that close, clean cut. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also comes with a larger LED spotlight that also has a dual temperature feature to fit varying skin tones, and it's also waterproof to make grooming in the shower super easy. Charging your trimmer is effortless with the fast USB-C port, keeping you ready for when you need it with up to 60 minutes of use on a full charge. And for those of you who are always on the go this holiday season, the travel lock feature ensures it won't unexpectedly power on in your luggage. Also included is the Weed Whacker 2.0, the gold standard ear and nose hair trimmer. With the same skin-safe technology, you can trim worry-free without the risk of nicks and cuts, and it's waterproof, making cleanup a breeze. The package also comes with the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and the Crop Preserver Lotion to reduce razor burn and itching and provide soothing aloe vera magic for your undercarriage. Finally, when purchasing this bundle, you also get two free gifts, the Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 premium travel bag that will hold all of your grooming essentials, ideal for holiday travels or for storage under the sink. So this holiday season, treat yourself or someone special to the ultimate grooming experience with the gift that keeps on giving. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra from Manscaped covers all your shaving, trimming, and post-grooming needs, ensuring you wrap up the year looking and feeling amazing. Use my promo code LLAMA and you'll get 20% off plus free international shipping at checkout. Once again, thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Alright then, let's begin with Plan C. Plan C was an ARC exotic fusion rifle that had the unique perk Plan C that read, charge and equip times are very short immediately after weapon swap. And if this sounds familiar, that's because it is. In fact, this entire exotic was made into the backup plan perk for fusion rifles in Destiny 2. So basically, we need to entirely redesign this exotic from the ground up. So, my idea to modernize Plan C would actually be to keep the Plan C intrinsic of backup plan to make it ready and fire super fast for the first few shots, but then I would give it the secondary trait Fast Hands that would read, while amplified, the Plan C intrinsic is active indefinitely, meaning that as long as you're amplified, you can continue firing the weapon at lightning speeds. I would also make Plan C a rapid fire fusion and give a damage increase over other rapid fires due to the insane charge time you're going to be having while amplified. Lastly, for the catalyst, I would give it eddy current to improve the reload speed even more, and since my rework hinges heavily on being amplified, this just makes sense. I think this would be a super cool way of retaining the original Plan C identity while also adding in some much needed Destiny 2 tuning, and with this rework, I could see it being good for DPS in PvE but also remaining balanced in PvP. But I will say that for all of my upcoming suggestions, do let me know what you think in the comments below. Next we have Pocket Infinity, the most neglected weapon in all of Destiny since it never received a light level reprisal and was left to gather dust in the confines of legacy content. So let's give it a much needed makeover. For those of you who are uninitiated, Pocket Infinity was another exotic fusion rifle that fired full auto and had the chance to return a round to the magazine that missed. The full auto portion was the most deadly and had to be nerfed at least once if memory serves, and as you can see from the gameplay, it fires very fast. So how can we transfer this over to Destiny 2? Well, given that this weapon in its current state is somewhat similar to my proposed rework for Plan C, to make it different, I would first give it the intrinsic trait Pocket Infinity that reads, High Impact Fusion Rifle. Reloading after a kill grants this weapon full auto capability for a short time, and I would have this be something like 3 seconds. For its secondary trait, I would give it the perk Sustained Violence that reads, defeating enemies or dealing sustained damage with this weapon extends the duration of Pocket Infinity. This would give it an edge in DPS while also making it super fun for ad clear. To balance things out, I would hesitate to have the magazine size be any higher than 5, so I think 5 is a good amount of ammo per mag. Finally, for its catalyst, I would give it Field Prep to help with the lower ammo count. Up next we have Invective, a solar shotgun that had the unique perk Invective, which allowed the weapon to slowly regenerate ammo over time from thin air. Identical to Icebreaker but just in shotgun form and a little bit slower. Given that Icebreaker has now made its way into Destiny 2, we can take some inspiration from that rework and apply it here, since both weapons originally worked the exact same way. So my idea is a little bit radical, so let me first give give some context. Invective is Ikora Raze's in-law weapon. She loves it. So first of all, I'd change the element to Void to match her swagger. Then after that, I'd give her the intrinsic trait Shadow Rift that reads, each shot has a moderate chance to spawn a black hole on hit, warping away minor enemies and heavily damaging major enemies. This perk is heavily inspired by the same ammo mod Shadow Rift from Black Ops 6 Zombies that does essentially that, and I think it would be a super sick perk to have in Destiny 2. For its secondary trait, I would give it the perk Supermassive that reads, enemies within close proximity to the black hole will become weakened, which would give it a nice team support role. Finally, for its catalyst, I would make it so defeating enemies affected by the black hole returns 1 ammo to the magazine in keeping with its Destiny 1 identity, but not as major as Icebreaker's ammo rework, since I believe Invective should be more about cool effects over ammo generation. Fun fact about Invective, it actually has an ornament called Iconoclast, which is also the title you get for finishing the Salvation's Edge raid seal. Anyway, moving on, we have Universal Remote, a rather interesting weapon because it was the game's only primary ammo shotgun that also had a scope, something very alien for a shotgun to have, so it only seems right that the weapon should return as a primary shotgun. We've seen it happen a couple of times where Bungie experiment with primary ammo weapons that are usually special ammo like Fighting Lion or the newly released Alethanim, then why not try it for a shotgun? So let's have the main exotic intrinsic be the fact that it takes primary ammo. At the same time, let's add a new secondary trait to spice things up called Kinetic Shrapnel. Landing multiple shots on a target causes them to take additional damage and emit deadly shrapnel that spreads to nearby enemies. So kinda like kinetic tremors, but instead it spreads a fan of projectiles that deal damage to any surrounding targets. I've made this only work on multiple hits so that not every ad you kill emits the shrapnel. I want it to be an effect you can reliably trigger on higher health enemies like mages or champions so it isn't too broken. Though speaking of broken, because it's infinite ammo, it's of course going to have to take a damage reduction compared to special ammo shotguns, but more importantly, in PvP, an infinite ammo shotgun is going to be a bit of a problem. So to address this, I would make it take special ammo in PvP only like every other shotgun. For the catalyst, I think something light would probably do best, so I'm going to give it Barrel Constrictor and simply leave it at that. Next, we have yet another iconic weapon, the No Land Beyond Sniper Rifle, which is currently in Destiny 2 in the hands of Devrim K as he safeguards the Trostland Church in the EDZ. No Land Beyond is far too iconic to warrant any major changes, so my proposition is to simply bring it in one for one. Recoil, scope sway, manual cycling, everything. Bring it all back, downsides and all. If I remember correctly, there was quite a skill curve to using this weapon properly, mostly due to how different it behaved compared to every other sniper, which I think is great and should stay the same. No Land Beyond was also a primary slot weapon in D1, and I think giving it the same treatment in D2 with infinite ammo is also the right move. But for its catalyst, I think something simple is all you would really need here. Maybe snapshot or opening shot would do the trick. PvP players, let me know in the comments. Next, we have another well-known sniper rifle, Patience and Time. This sniper had the unique perk Patience and Time that made the user invisible after staying in scope view for a couple of seconds, and right away I know how I want to remake this. First of all, I would change the element from Arc to Void and modify the trait to read like so. Aiming this weapon for a short period without firing grants Void invisibility to make it align with current Destiny 2 sandbox verb classifications. And then I would give it the secondary trait Serenity and Silence, which reads, further aiming this weapon without firing will cause the rest of the magazine to deal double critical damage. I specifically want this trait to affect precision damage only so that you can't one hit to the body in PvP, though in PvE this won't make the slightest difference, and I think it would be a cool alternative option to use and have fun with. For the catalyst, I would also give it Withering Gaze since it makes perfect sense with my proposed rework. Next, we have the Solar Exotic Machine Gun Super Good Advice, and its main perk was basically exactly the same as the Deconstruct perk we have nowadays. It would simply make it so almost all shots that missed their target would return to the magazine, though interestingly, this effect would work on constructs like oracles for some reason, even if you weren't missing. But overall, this machine gun was the embodiment of a bullet hose, so how can we bring that fantasy into Destiny 2? First of all, I want it to be brought back as a 450 RPM. Then, for its intrinsic, my idea is to completely change it and make it work kinda like Tommy's matchbook, but with a twist. Dealing continuous precision damage increases precision damage and rate of fire, but builds weapon heat. When weapon heat is full, the weapon overheats and cannot be fired for a short time. Dealing body shot damage decreases weapon heat. So the whole idea with this is just constantly switching between body shot and precision damage to manage the heat meter and make sure you don't overheat. But if you get the balance right, you get rewarded for increased precision damage. For its secondary trait, I would give it the perk Cosmic Venting, which reads, while having frost armor, this weapon generates heat more slowly. And my idea for this heat meter is to have it like traditional meters like Manticore, where it's divided into 4 levels. So with this trait, if you're within the 4th level, you can spend more time within it because the heat is filling more slowly. Finally, for its catalyst, I'd give it deconstruct because why not? Seems like it would fit quite nicely here. Moving on, we have Zhalo Supercell, an iconic weapon from the Taken King that essentially lives on through Risk Runner, since both weapons have traits that let them chain arc lightning between enemies and reload themselves while doing so. So how can we change Zhalo Supercell so that it's different enough to Risk Runner but still retains its identity? Easy, just give it elemental verb synergy, since Risk Runner doesn't have any. Its main intrinsic Zhalo Supercell now reads, sustained fire from this weapon rapidly applies jolt. Defeating jolted enemies partially refills the magazine. So it's essentially the same, just with Destiny 2 verbs. Then I would also modify the secondary trait, bolts from the blue, to read, defeating jolted enemies charges your underbarrel shock charge. Press R to ready and release an underbarrel shock charge that deals damage and creates a jolting explosion. I had this idea because, as you can see in game, Zhalo features an underbarrel component which in my mind is perfect to house a one-off jolting explosive that you can charge over time. Finally, for its catalyst, I would give it the perk Electric Cherry, where reloading creates a jolting discharge around you that deals more damage the emptier the magazine, again inspired by Black Ops 6 Zombies. I would love to see this weapon return one day, perhaps in Frontiers, Bungie, pretty please. Anyway, we still have a fair number of weapons to go, so let's continue by talking about Fabian Strategy, the kinetic auto rifle that was actually entirely Titan exclusive. This exotic wasn't all that special since its main perk, Front Lines, made it so whenever enemies were close, you received increased handling and stability as well as kills automatically reloading a portion of the magazine. So its exotic perk was basically subsistence. So my idea for its rework would be to add a frontal energy shield. With its new perk now reading, when aiming down sights, this weapon generates a protective energy shield that absorbs all incoming damage directed at the user. The energy shield taunts nearby enemies. I would have it so the shield doesn't have a ton of HP to make it balanced, and then for its secondary trait, I would give it subsistence just like before. For the catalyst, much like how the Titan Juggernaut shield is stronger while amplified, I think the same should be true for the shield as well. So whenever you're amplified, the energy shield is 50% more durable. Oh, and I would also make it not Titan exclusive, so everyone can enjoy it. Next we have the First Curse, the polar opposite to the last word because it's a kinetic hand cannon that fires slowly and favors aiming down sights. It has the perk, the First Curse, that reads, first precision kill of the magazine refills it, granting bonuses to range and stability until the player reloads. And you know, you read traits like this and compare them to the craziness we have in Destiny 2, and it really shows how far we've come in terms of sheer power over the years when this was considered an exotic trait. So for Destiny 2, in my mind, I feel this weapon should become a super stacked 120 hand cannon with a new intrinsic that reads, while aiming down sights, this weapon gains massively increased aim assist and stability. Scoring a kill without reloading grants your next shot heavily increased damage. And in my head, I would have this buffed shot deal around double damage, so in Crucible you'd be able to 2-tap to the head. But the catch is that I'd make the magazine size only 5 bullets, meaning you'd have to spend your first 3 being perfectly accurate, getting either a 3 crit or 2 crit 1 body, but then for the remaining 2 bullets you would need to hit both headshots in order to secure the 2-tap. For its secondary trait, I would give it Rapid Hit, and then for its catalyst, Zen Moment. This sounds balanced to me, but any PvP players, do let me know what you think in the comments. Tlaloc is next, and this was the Warlock exclusive kinetic scout rifle that had the main trait Overflow that read, this weapon has better handling, rate of fire and stability while the wielder's super is charged, which basically made it a stat monster and overall a very consistent weapon for PvP, and even more so when using Sunsinger because you would hold on to your super anyway for self-res. And to be honest, I don't think this requires much changing. A 1-to-1 remake would do just fine here in my opinion, with the addition of Thresh as the weapon's catalyst to make you generate your super slightly faster, letting you get to the main perk slightly faster. Oh, and I would also change the perk name from Overflow to something like Paracausal Enhancements, and I would also make it not Warlock exclusive. Next on the list is Boolean Gemini, another mostly forgotten kinetic scout rifle where you had a choice between the trait One Way, which granted bonus agility on precision kills, or Another, which granted bonus armor on non-precision kills, which was rather boring, but I can respect what they were trying by letting you choose what you wanted the gun to do. So in keeping with this, here's what I'd like to see changed. For Destiny 2, you can now switch between One Way and or Another by holding R, and One Way now reads precision kills grant bonus mobility, handling, reload speed, and sprint speed, and or Another reads multi-kills grant you damage resistance. And then my idea for both of these buffs is to have them last around 15 seconds each, encouraging the player to keep swapping modes to continue receiving the benefits from both. For the catalyst, I would also add kinetic tremors to make it feel like an all-round consistent scout rifle that's very reliable. Next is Zen Meteor, and I remember a lot of people saying that Still Hunt was essentially the spiritual successor to this weapon because Zen Meteor was a solar sniper rifle, and its main perk Dynamite made it so rapid kills loaded an extra high damage round, and then its secondary trait, with a laser beam, made said dynamite round cause a massive explosion. The thing that set this exotic back was the fact that you needed kills, not hits, to trigger the special bullet, and and explosion. So I feel like all this gun would really need is to have the perk change to trigger on precision hits to make it way more viable. So my version would have the main perk Dynamite with a laser beam that reads, landing precision hits generates an extra bullet that deals massively increased damage and causes an ignition. And since the magazine size is only 3, it would have to be 3 precision hits. Then for its secondary trait, I would give it the perk Thermonuclear, which reads, causing an ignition refills the magazine to make it compete with the likes of Whisper and Stillhunt. As far as the catalyst is concerned, I don't think there's too much needed here, so field prep is probably a good way to go. Next is a bit of a meme gun, and that's Dreg's Promise, an arc sidearm modeled after the guns fallen Dregs use. And it really didn't have much going for it back in the day. Its main perk simply stated that it had high ricochet shock rounds with enhanced target acquisition. So for D2, we're gonna have to change things up a bit. My idea for Dreg's Promise would be to first of all make it a rocket sidearm. Then after that, I'd make it so reloading after a kill grants you a lightning grenade that can be stuck to surfaces. The reason for this is that Dregs in-game often seem to throw lots and lots of lightning grenades at you, so why not add that functionality here? It would of course be on a relatively short cooldown of about 5 or 6 seconds, or function how the Rock does for Forerunner's Catalyst, where it consumes a certain amount of ammo. And to be honest, I think this is a great idea. For the secondary trait, I would also make it so while Dreg's Promise is equipped, your arc grenades apply Jolt. I think this is good because if you're running arc or prismatic, you won't need to run Spark of Shock or Facet of Dominance to get Jolt on your arc nades. And of course, it adds the Jolt to the lightning grenade from the main perk as well. Catalyst wise, I'm very tempted to give it Volt Shot, but instead I think a perk like Lightning Grenade Final Blows partially refill the magazine would be more appropriate. But again, do let me know what you think. Next we have Nova Mortis and Abbadon, otherwise known as Void Lord and Fire Lord. And yeah, if you didn't already know, in Destiny 1, Thunderlord came in 3 separate flavors. The OG Arc, then in the Taken King, the Void and Solar variants were also added. And they all function exactly the same, there is no difference except the element. And while I doubt Bungie will ever add them to Destiny 2, if they do, in keeping with their previous game, they should just make them behave identically to how Thunderlord does now, and maybe sprinkle in a bit of elemental verb synergy or something like that. Next we have a rather interesting weapon, and that is the machine gun known as Nemesis Star. And I don't know why, but 15-year-old me was always so fascinated by this weapon because for one, it looks awesome, and second, it has a rather unique firing mechanism. Nemesis Star's main perk, Extinction Cycle, reads, on trigger pull, this weapon's initial burst has a higher rate of fire, which is rather odd, but then its secondary trait, Strange Gravity, also says, when holding down the trigger, range and accuracy increase as rate of fire decreases. Kills grant bonus grenade energy. So it was basically a weird hybrid of Demolitionist and Adagio that didn't require kills. And from what I remember, it was never really a meta weapon, but it was pretty cool nonetheless. So in terms of what we can do for Destiny 2, my idea is to change the perk to lean heavily into the slowing rate of fire. So my version would read, kills with this weapon decrease the rate of fire but increase its damage. And I would set a minimum rate of fire, though I think it should start at 900 RPM and go all the way down to 180 RPM where the damage is at its maximum. As for the secondary trait, keeping Strange Gravity 1-for-1 makes total sense for me. And then I would separate the kills grant bonus grenade energy part into its catalyst as Demolitionist. The whole point of this weapon is firing slowly, so I think it's best it stays that way, but of course with the modern twist we discussed. Next we have the iconic exotic sword trio of Boltcaster, Raze Lighter, and the one and only Dark Drinker. However, since every single one of these swords' special moves has become a sword frame in Destiny 2, I don't think it would really make much sense to bring these back. As iconic as they are, I think Bungie did an excellent job making Vortex and Caster frames in Season of Arrivals, and back then, Falling Guillotine, dare I say, was just as powerful as Dark Drinker was. So for these 3, I'm going to give them a pass, but if you still think they deserve their own exotic reprisal, drop a comment explaining how you would do it. Moving on to the penultimate weapon, we have the Young Wolf's Howl, the 4th exotic sword which released in Rise of Iron that again sadly never saw much use. Its special move created a line of fire that set enemies on fire and also debuffed them by 15%. So you could see it as a sort of support weapon, though unfortunately this debuff was overridden by every other debuff, so no one ever really used it. So in order to bring it up to par in Destiny 2, I have the perfect solution. In a similar way to how a Wolfpack Ergosum buffs your team's sword damage, I think Young Wolf's Howl should do the same. Keep the special move as is and bring along the debuff, but have it stack this time and only affect the damage of swords. So in full, targets affected by Howling Flames receive more damage from swords, and I think a good 10% weakness would work super nicely here. Finally, for its catalyst, I would give it the perk Saladin's Fury that reads, Howling Flames is more potent and lingers for longer. While we're at it, since it's Iron Lord themed, why not have this as a reward for earning the Iron Lord title? Just a thought, would give a nice incentive to chase the title, that's for sure. But anyway, now let's talk about the final weapon that's not in Destiny 2, and that is the sniper rifle Hereafter. This weapon had the main perk, the Hereafter, which reads, crouching increases scope zoom and makes it easier easier to aim under fire, as well as the secondary trait, Blinding Light, which also reads, precision kills with this weapon cause a bright flash that can blind nearby enemies. So if this was brought into Destiny 2, for starters, I would remove the need to crouch in order to switch zoom levels and instead assign it to holding R for some more flexibility. Second, I would also make it so Blinding Light activates on hits and not kills. As for the catalyst, because I remember Hereafter being more of a PvP thing, I think either snapshot or opening shot would do the trick here. So there we have it. That's how I would redesign every single missing exotic from Destiny 1 into Destiny 2. I realize this has been a bit of a long video, so if you made it to the end, thank you very much. And if you'd like to let me know that you did, simply comment Siva and I'll give you a love heart. I really hope you enjoyed this video, as it took quite some time to make and it's not normally what I post, so yeah. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I hope you learned something and I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.